Life is beautiful. Biology, the study of life, is the ultimate appreciation of that beauty. I'm making this series in the hopes that you too can appreciate the natural world with the same wonder and passion as I. And of course, help you get a 5 on the AP exam. But before we cover biology, before we can understand cellular processes or the function of organic molecules, we must first understand the interactions between atoms. In other words, we have to cover the fundamentals of chemistry. Honestly, just the thought of chemistry gives me hives, so for your sake and mine, let's go stick with the fundamentals. Today we're just going to be talking about the structure of atoms, inter- and intramolecular bonding, and how they apply to the amazing properties of water. Hi, my name is Arthur Dialli. Let's get this over with. Stuff is made of smaller stuff. You are made of cells, which are made of molecules, which are made of atoms. Atoms are composed of subparticles, positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons. There's also neutrally charged neutrons, but don't worry about them. Normally, the charges of positive protons and negative electrons balance each other out, resulting in a neutrally charged atom. However, when there is an imbalance in the number of protons and electrons, the atom becomes charged. A charged atom is known as an ion. When there are more protons than electrons, the atom becomes a positively charged ion, a cation. When there are more electrons than protons, the atom becomes a negatively charged ion, an anion. Let's put a pin in the concept of ions for now as we go more in depth into electrons. Interactions between atoms are really the interactions between their valence electrons. Electrons are organized into energy levels, otherwise known as shells. Aside from the first energy level, which only holds 2 electrons, each shell holds at maximum 8 electrons. The outermost energy level is referred to as the valence shell. The electrons in a valence shell are referred to as valence electrons. In chemistry, we mainly focus on valence electrons and the completion of the outermost shell. Let's look at a few examples. Helium has 2 electrons, completely filling its first energy level. Argon has 18 electrons, completely filling all 3 of its energy levels. Let's keep going. This is sodium and this is chlorine. When we look into the valence shell, we see that sodium has 1 too many valence electrons, while chlorine is missing 1. Now, this isn't just unsatisfying for me. Atoms abide by the octet rule. Atoms want to complete their outermost shell. Atoms want to have all their energy levels filled with electrons, and they are willing to react with other atoms to do so. Look at chlorine. It only has 7 valence electrons, 1 away from filling the octet rule. Sodium has 1 extra valence electrons that is dying to get rid of. Sodium donates its extra valence electron to chlorine, allowing both to have complete sets and fulfilling the octet rule. But oh no, look at chlorine. Now it has 1 more electron than protons, making it a negatively charged anion. Now sodium has more protons than electrons, making it a positively charged cation. As you know, opposites, especially opposite charges, attract. The positive cation sodium and the negative anion chlorine, with their opposite charges, attract one another. This forms an ionic bond and an ionic compound. Ionic bonds, as this example shows, involves transfer of valence electrons. The result is the creation of ions, which become attracted to one another, forming ionic compounds. To achieve those lofty subatomic beauty standards, to fill all of an atom's energy levels, atoms are willing to transfer valence electrons as seen through ionic bonding. However, atoms can also share electrons. Let's look at this example. Here we have 2 hydrogen atoms. They both have 1 valence electron in their final shell. They both need 1 more valence electron to fill their shell and abide by the octet rule. So, these 2 atoms share 2 valence electrons between one another to complete their final energy level. This forms what is known as a covalent bond in between these atoms. It's kind of adorable, isn't it? Through the magic of friendship, atoms share electrons between one another to form covalent bonds and molecules. Sadly, in certain cases, electrons are not shared equally between atoms. Let's look at fluorine and hydrogen. They both are 1 valence electron away from filling their outermost shell, so these atoms share electrons, forming a covalent bond. The thing is, fluorine is a greedy, narcissistic, backstabbing, electron-digging particle. By all of that, I mean to say that fluorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. Electronegativity is a chemical property that measures the amount of pull an atom has on electrons. Although they form a covalent bond between one another, fluorine is more electronegative than hydrogen, causing the negatively charged electrons to be pulled towards its side. This uneven pull causes fluorine to be partially negative, while the hydrogen becomes partially positive. This is a polar covalent bond. A polar covalent bond is where electrons are shared between atoms, but due to electronegativity, electrons are pulled towards one atom over another. This imbalanced pull on electrons results in a partial positive and a partial negative side. The molecule formed is labeled as being polar. Nonpolar molecules, on the other hand, are molecules without partially charged sides. They are formed when atoms have an equal pull on electrons, or the geometric symmetry of the molecule causes the polar covalent bonds to cancel out. So, why does this matter? Well, don't forget, opposite charges attract. Polar molecules with partially positive and partially negative sides pull into other polar molecules. This pull between different molecules, this intermolecular force, is known as hydrogen bonding. Let's use hydrogen bonding and everything we learned so far to analyze the amazing properties of water. First thing first, water is polar. Oxygen requires 2 more valence electrons to complete its outermost shell, so it pairs with 2 hydrogen atoms, forming covalent bonds. Oxygen, being more electronegative, pulls negatively charged electrons towards itself. This makes oxygen partially negative, while the attached hydrogen is partially positive. Distinct positive and negative sides means that water is polar. Opposite charges attract. The partially charged sides of water molecules attract the partially charged sides of other polar molecules through hydrogen bonding. This is seen through cohesion. Cohesion is hydrogen bonding between other water molecules. Cohesion causes water molecules to clump up together like glue. This causes surface tension. Surface tension allows water droplets to maintain their form and can allow pond striders to skid on the surface of water. Cohesion also causes water to resist temperature or state changes. Temperature is a kinetic energy of molecules. High heat causes molecules to be excited and spread apart. Because water molecules attract and pull themselves together, a lot of heat energy is required to excite water molecules enough to raise temperature or change its state into a gas. Water's high heat of vaporization and high specific heat allows large bodies of water to exist and maintain a liquid state. Hydrogen bonding also causes water to form crystals when frozen. This causes water in its solid form, otherwise known as ice, to be less dense than its liquid state. This allows ice to float, allowing life underneath the ice's surface to propagate. Water interacts with other charged particles as well. Adhesion is hydrogen bonding between water and other polar or ionic molecules. This makes water a universal solvent. The many partially charged water molecules can pull and overcome the ionic bonds between cations and anions within ionic compounds. But how do nonpolar molecules interact with water? The answer is they don't. We can therefore divide compounds into 2 categories: hydrophilic, which includes polar and ionic compounds, and hydrophobic, which are nonpolar compounds. This is why oil does not mix with water. Oil doesn't get dissolved by water because it's nonpolar. Hydrophilic interacts with water and gets dissolved. Hydrophobic does not. This is not really related to hydrogen bonding, but do know that water is set as the neutral point of the pH scale. Alright, I'm stopping this video here. All this talk of chemistry has definitely given me brain tuberculosis. Please like and subscribe to stay updated on the next part of this series, where we'll go more in depth about organic molecules and the pH scale. Leave your questions, complaints, compliments, and everything else in the comment section down below. My name is North Diali, and I still hate chemistry. See you next time.